Can any of these places change? I think that's the question before us, unless you think somebody's starting something new. So let's think about the Washington Post, where Glenn Kessler worked up until just recently. For years, and I didn't ask Glenn Kessler about this, and I should have, there were two guys at the Washington Post, both of whom have recently left, Philip Bump and Aaron Blake, okay? They were not columnists. Their work did not appear on the website and in the paper on the op-ed page where they'd clearly be seen as liberals. They appeared in the news section, seen as news analysis, okay? When I say see news analysis, I don't think opinion. I think kind of like what I do here, reporting with some analysis that put a finger on the scale a little bit, but not ideological finger, but historical perspective or calling something out that's wrong. But again, not only calling out one side. And that's the problem with these two guys, as far as I'm concerned. I read a lot of their work. I couldn't read all of it because after a while, I got the joke. They were hostile to Donald Trump. Philip Bump and Aaron Blake, both gone from the paper, but for many, many months, over a long period of time and lots of articles, appeared to a regular Washington Post reader like they were news reporters, and they were not. I could give you 1,000 examples, including the dogs that don't bark, which is to say, it'd be hard to find either of these guys writing stuff negative about Democrats, except the left will write about Democrats negatively by saying they're not doing enough to fight Donald Trump. That's the one criticism they'll make. But here's a couple things from Phil Bump. A5, please. Again, if you read the Washington Post, you would think this guy was considered a part of the news department. And here's an article from him. Even some in the pro-Trump media environment are wary of his plans. Okay, that's just a negative thing. Saying, well, Trump is so bad that even some people who normally like Trump don't like him. That just again, I don't even need to explain the bias there. Here's another one, A6. This is Philip Bump. Trump's fake it till you make it autocracy. Okay, now I could see a liberal columnist for the Washington Post calling Donald Trump's government an autocracy. I could see somebody on MSNBC doing that. But somebody who's in the Washington Post news section talking about that, you won't find any Republican, anyone associated with Donald Trump who didn't think Phil Bump was biased when he was at the Washington Post. Here's another guy, Aaron Blake. Okay, here's Aaron Blake, A7. Aaron Blake writes, the Republican squirm is in full swing. Now, to be fair, reporters don't write the headlines. And so I don't think that Aaron Blake or Phil Bump wrote the headlines, but the articles they wrote, their general oeuvre reflective of this. The Republican squirm is in full swing. Quote, it's not exactly news that the Republican-controlled Congress has largely subjugated itself to Trump. Where's the bias here? Well, when Nancy Pelosi got every Democrat to vote with her, the liberals in the media talked about how masterful she was. What an extraordinary legislative technician. But when Donald Trump does it for Aaron Blake, it shows that the Republicans are subjugating themselves to Donald Trump. All right, here's one more from Aaron Blake, A8, please. The many big things Trump, quote, didn't know about. There's certainly a question about how much Trump actually is out of the loop and how much he's just saying that Trump's record for dishonesty is nearly without compare. Now, I don't think you can find a lot of Aaron Blake columns about Joe Biden saying that, Donald Trump said good people on both sides, or Joe Biden said the Georgia election law was Jim Crow on steroids. These two guys writing for such a long time in the Washington Post news section with tendentiously hostile columns, articles about Donald Trump. Now they're both gone. I can't tell you the exact circumstances. Blake sometimes would team up with fair reporters and have double bylines. I was stunned about that. He's now, spoiler alert, he's now at CNN. And I've seen him a couple times on CNN. And CNN treats him like he's just a straight ahead political reporter with Washington Post credentials. CNN continues to be a huge offender. We'll talk about that in the next segment. But I watched a roundtable on Monday on CNN about President Trump's announcement this week about putting various federal personnel on the ground in Washington, D.C. And I was going to show you part of it, but it's just too painful to think about watching it again. But the whole thing, it was like 5 CNN reporters and other reporters they booked for this roundtable, just so hostile to Donald Trump. Just no notion of let's show both sides, just hostile. Okay. Now, The Washington Post got rid of those two guys. My suspicion is, I don't know this, but my suspicion is it had something to do with the paper understanding that if you're going to put anti-Trump propagandists in the news section, you're going to have a hard time appealing to people if you want them to read the paper because they think it's fair. Here's, again, 1,000 examples of what they cover and don't cover. But here's a recent thing from the Washington Post. This is A10, please. This is about President Trump saying he wants to bring back what people my age will remember. Younger people have no idea. There used to be a thing called the presidential fitness test. So if you were in public school, and probably a lot of private schools too, I went to public school, you had to take this fitness test to demonstrate you were meeting the basic minimum requirements of pull-ups and push-ups and running and other stuff. So Donald Trump loves nostalgia. The headline, the presidential fitness test is nostalgia in the worst way. It's just like this president, an overweight aficionado of fast food whose primary exercise appears to be clambering in and out of a golf cart. So again, great for a column. What this is doing in the news section of the Washington Post, I cannot say. Mocking the president, being focused on his weight, and having the emphasis not be, well, isn't it interesting that we're bringing back something to encourage physical fitness? Rather, it's just, let's slam the president, let's slam him, let's make fun of him physically. The Washington Post, even in the absence of Glenn Kessler, even in the absence of Phil Bump and Aaron Blake, still, I think, would say has a long way to go. And they're just, every day, there's so many examples. And I'll say what I said last week. If you want to work at the Washington Post or be a defender of the Washington Post and say they're not liberally biased, you need to know that half the country thinks it is. And to a degree that they don't take it seriously. I want the Washington Post to be strong. Now, there are a lot of you who are going to say, can't happen. You're wasting your time, you're diluted, and you're risking building up a place as credible when they're not. And I'll say again, we need big places in the media that are strong to hold every powerful interest accountable, not just Republicans, Democrats, businesses, labor unions, anybody with power. That's one of the two big roles of the media, along with telling the stories of our time. So can the Washington Post fix it? Well, I think they're making some progress, but they have to change their business model, right? So it's two prongs and they're related. One is the business side. Who are you selling to? Who's buying what the Washington Post has on offer? And right now, I think Glenn Kessler's right. They're selling to a lot of liberals. They need to figure out that business model. How do they thrive, not just survive, having a product that works for people that they'll pay for? And then the other side is, what is the product? Who are you hiring? What's their attitude? How is the paper being edited? All this stuff is you're never going to be perfect. But what you need is a body of work that over time, people can say, well, it's not the same Washington Post. They got rid of those liberals who were masquerading as news reporters, writing anti-Trump propaganda, and other changes. And again, it starts with, what's a business model that will work? Do the liberals who read the Washington Post only want to read liberal stuff? The Washington Post opinion section has some prominent conservative voices. Now, I won't say they have a lot of MAGA voices, but at least they have some conservative voices. But it all starts with this concept of, what do you do? What do you do if you want a thriving business that's fair? And I don't understand people who own newspapers or manage newspapers or write for newspapers or anchor a show on cable news. I don't understand them coming in and saying, as Glenn Kessler did, I worked at a fair place, and then seeing the reaction. Again, a fair look at the content would say it's not right. But even if you think somehow it is, even if you're in that blue bubble that Glenn Kessler was in, and so many of you who wrote in and tweeted about it, even then you have to say to yourself, well, people aren't buying what we're selling. If they're conservative or fair-minded, maybe we need to think anew. So let's use a metaphor. You have a restaurant, and no one under 35 will eat in your restaurant. Almost no one. Like, all your customers are older, right? And you'd say, well, the way the menu is now, old people like our menu. Got an early bird special. We got the food that's easy to chew and digest. Great business. And we certainly don't want to change it. We don't play loud music. It's easy to hear in here. Menu's got big type. We don't want to change any of that, because our business right now, our revenue comes from older people. And then maybe a new manager comes in or a new owner and says, it's great to have all these customers older than 35, but what about younger people? Wouldn't it be great to have a business that could appeal to all of this? Restaurants, not only is it half full, but every year, fewer and fewer people are eating in our restaurant. Maybe we need to figure out a way to have younger people eat in this restaurant without alienating the older people. So still have the easily digestible food. Maybe have the big print menu. Maybe don't have loud music throughout the restaurant. But then you'd say, well, maybe there's some younger dishes we could serve. Maybe there could be another room in the back of the restaurant that we could play some nice music in. Maybe we could talk to young people and say, why aren't you eating in our restaurant? Are there things we could serve here that you might like to eat? And then if you executed it right, and you'd say, well, we're having stuff that lots of people would like. And maybe we can even find some dishes that the old people like and the young people like. And maybe we'll build our business around that. Maybe there's a way to have a restaurant where, sure, off to the side, we're serving some stuff specifically for young people. And over here, we're serving some stuff specifically for old people. But in the main, we're making some stuff that everybody likes, because who wouldn't like a good chicken pot pie or some Thai sushi, whatever it is? Maybe not be a perfect metaphor, but you see my point. The Washington Post has been serving one group of people and claiming our restaurant's for everybody. Who wouldn't like eating here at this Washington Post restaurant? But the proof, sir and madam, is in the pudding. That restaurant serving pudding that fewer and fewer people are eating, making it harder and harder to keep the restaurant in business. But they're acting like everybody should like this pudding. I don't know why young people don't like this pudding. It's totally great. Everybody should like it. I'll say again, I want these places to thrive. Nobody's starting a successful new cable channel. Nobody's starting a successful national newspaper. I'd love it if somebody did, but I don't see it happening. So the few places that are left that are big enough to do what needs to be done, we gotta change. We have to hope they find a way to do it better. And I hope they do it fast enough that I can talk about other things on future episodes. But I will return to this topic as much as I need to, because it's vitally important. We have major, vital national institutions that have lost their way. And if they think it's going to fix itself when Donald Trump leaves the presidency, I don't believe that's true. It'll make it easier on them in some ways, but they shouldn't look at it as an escape route. They should look at it as an opportunity. Start now. And once Trump derangement syndrome has receded as a pandemic sweeping through the newsrooms of dominant media, opportunity, business model that works, and actually doing your job the way it's intended to be done. There's a real concern right now that the continued divide between the Trump White House and the Federal Reserve is putting us all behind the curve again. Will the Fed be able to take the right action at the right time, or are we going to be looking at a potential economic slowdown? So what does all this mean for your savings? There's an opportunity now. Consider diversifying with gold through Birch Gold Group. For decades, gold has been viewed as a safe haven in times of economic stagnation or global uncertainty, or when there is high inflation. Birch Gold makes it incredibly easy for you to diversify some of your savings into gold. If you've got an IRA or an old 401k, you can convert that into a tax-sheltered IRA in physical gold. Or you can buy some gold to keep in your safe at home. First, you need to get educated, and that's where Birch Gold comes in. They will send you a free info kit about gold. Just text the word NEXT to the number 989898. Again, text NEXT to 989898. Consider diversifying a portion of your savings into gold. That way, if the Fed falls behind the curve again for America, at least you can stay ahead for yourself.